Lillahi ta'ala, barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khayra. All right, we're continuing in Bahjat An-NaDHar, and we have reached question 65. The author says, give a proof. Could remove the word a if you want. Give proof from the Quran that belittling Allah or His Messenger is blasphemy. Okay. So my answer would be the saying of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ إنما كنا نخوض ونلعب ولئن سألتهم ليقولن إنما كنا نخوض ونلعب قل أبالله وآياته ورسوله كنتم تستهزئون لا تعتذروا قد كفرتم بعد إيمانكم. That's the very verse that is cited here. That's the verse that the Sheikh taught us. This verse, I just recited it for you. It is Surah At-Tawbah, ayahs 65 and 66, meaning, and if you were to ask them, and if you ask them, O Muhammad, they will surely say, we were only conversing and playing. إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ. We were indulging. وَنَلَعَبْ and playing. قُلْ أَبِاللَّهِ. Say, is it Allah and His verses and His messenger that you are mocking? Make no excuse. You have committed blasphemy after you had the belief. Okay. After you had the belief, what I know that it means, after your display of belief. After your display of belief, put display of in parentheses. After your belief, ba'da imanikum, yani after your display of belief. Meaning these ones were hypocrites. They weren't Muslims, but they showed themselves as Muslims. And therefore, since they showed themselves as Muslims, Allah said, ba'da imanikum, after your iman, yani after your display of iman. And therefore, they were judged as apostates. Now, you might say to me, but if they were never Muslims, how could they be apostates? And then I would answer you by saying, not that they were true apostates, but that they were judged as apostates. Because there's a rule. There are some types of people who are or who have the judgment of apostates. Not the reality of apostates, but the judgment of apostates. Who are those? There's more than one kind, and amongst them is the hypocrite who displays his blasphemy. The hypocrite who displays his blasphemy. Meaning, when we say he's a hypocrite, means he's not a Muslim, but he is showing himself to be one. So we are judging him as a Muslim because we don't know what's in his heart. Then when he displays his blasphemy after that, then for us, he's an apostate. Even if in reality, he's not an apostate because he was never a Muslim. Do you have any question about this? Okay. Question 66. Give the name of one Islamic reference from those who conveyed the consensus about charging with blasphemy the person who curses Allah. Let's say, I like the word insults better than curses. The one who insults Allah. The name of one Islamic reference from those who conveyed the consensus about charging with blasphemy the person who insults Allah. The answer didn't come to me. Who conveyed the consensus about the charge of blasphemy for the one who insults Allah. I had to look at the answer. This is my first time. So I got, Yani, alhamdulillah, up to answer 66. I answered all of them until now. And now when I see the answer, I just remembered. I didn't remember. Al-Qadri Iyad, yes. Imam Al-Qadri Iyad. Al-Qadri means judge. I like to say Judge Iyad Al-Yahsubi in his book Ash-Shifa said, there is no disagreement among the Muslims that a person from the Muslims who insults Allah is a blasphemer. Yes. But the period goes inside the quotation marks. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Question 67. Give the name of one Islamic reference from those who conveyed the consensus about charging with blasphemy the person who uttered a blasphemous word or did a blasphemous action. Give the name of one Islamic reference. Yani, of someone, yani, a Muslim scholar is give the name of a scholar. That's the meaning of the question. From those who conveyed the consensus about charging with blasphemy or deeming as a blasphemer the person who uttered a blasphemous word or did a blasphemous action. The consensus about that. Also, no name is coming to my mind. What does the answer say here? Answer. Tajuddin As-Subki said in his book Muqaddimatu At-Tabaqat, and these are not directly taken, number 66 and 67, are not taken directly from the summary of obligatory knowledge. Tajuddin As-Subki said in his book Muqaddimatu Tabaqat, should be another D there, Muqaddimah. What means? There is, and you don't need to say what means. I told you that before. You can just say what he said, even if it's in another language. Like in the Quran. That's what's in the Quran. You didn't see in the Quran. He said, what means? He said, and then it's put in Arabic, even if he didn't say it in Arabic. He said, there is no disagreement among Al-Ash'ari and his companions. Rather, among all the Muslims, I don't know what to say here, that the person who utters a saying of blasphemy or does the doings of blasphemers is a blasphemer. 2. Is a blasphemer to Allah, the Exalted, Al-Azim. Furthermore, he will dwell eternally in hellfire, even though his heart knows the truth. Yani, even if his heart knows the truth. Furthermore, knowledge does not benefit him in his stubbornness and does not protect him from becoming a blasphemer. No two Muslims disagree about this judgment. Interesting. MashaAllah. So, I never memorized that quote. The first one I knew. The one from Al-Qadri Iyad, I knew that one. This one, the answer, the quote of Tajuddin As-Subki, I don't remember it, subhanallah. Yani, it's familiar. It's just familiar. It's not very clear in my memory, though. Okay, so I didn't get 67 either. So I missed 2. Question 68. What is the judgment of the person who denies what is apparently known by necessity from the religion? What is apparently known? Why it says apparently, I'm not sure. Something is known by necessity or is not known by necessity. And so I feel compelled to adjust the question. What is the judgment of the person who denies what is known in the religion by necessity? From the religion. So my answer is, anyone who denies something that is known in the religion by necessity blasphemes unless he is newly acquainted with Islam or like someone who is newly acquainted with Islam. And I would add to that answer, except when it comes to matters that are the most fundamental matters of the creed, that is, believing in Allah, believing in His Messenger, and believing that Islam is the only correct religion, these are known in the religion by necessity, but even a new Muslim will blaspheme in this case. That is, those parts right there have no excuse for anyone. That's my answer. The one who denies what's known in the religion by necessity blasphemes, unless he's like a new Muslim, except for those most fundamental matters of the creed. He will blaspheme even if he is a new Muslim. Let's see what the answer is here. It says, the person who denies something that is apparently known, which the scholars and common Muslims equally know. So this word apparently, probably obvious is better. Obviously known. Because apparently, as if it means seemingly, seems, what appears, what seems. And that's different from what's obvious. But I'll read it as it's stated here. The person who denies something that is apparently known, which the scholars and common Muslims equally know, commits blasphemy. So, obviously. What's obviously known. Correct. One is not excused unless he is a new Muslim or has been raised in a desert away from the scholars. Correct. However, or has been raised in a desert away from the scholars, that particular scenario is not a condition. What the condition is, or let's just say has been raised, take out in a desert. That's just an example. Away from the scholars, or on a mountaintop, away from the scholars, or he was incarcerated, away from the scholars, for example. On a condition that he does not know that this matter is from Islam. Yani he doesn't know. Yeah. He does not know. He's a new Muslim, or he's like a new Muslim. When I said he's like a new Muslim, that's right here. Or has been raised away from the scholars. That makes him like a new Muslim. And here they added a condition that I didn't mention. On a condition that he does not know that this matter is from Islam. And I didn't mention it just because for me it was obvious. Yani, here's the question. What is the judgment of someone who denies something that is known in the religion by necessity? My answer was, he blasphemes unless he's a new Muslim or like a new Muslim, except in those most basic cases of creed. And I didn't say, as long as he didn't know about the matter he's denying, just in my own mind, it was obvious. So it didn't come out in my answer. Being stated here is a good thing. This is a good addition. On a condition that he does not know that this matter is from Islam, because if he knew for sure, he's going to blaspheme. Also, it's a condition that the matter in concern must not be related to matters such as clearing Allah from resembling the creation, or being in a place, or any unbefitting attributes, and the Prophet from non-befitting attributes. Yes, that's correct. That's included in what I said when I said, except for the most fundamental basic matters of the creed, then no one will be excused. So yes, good. This is the complete answer here. I told you before, contractions like it's better to avoid that in formal writing. Would have been better here to say it is instead of it's. Also, something is unclear in the writing here. Also, it says a condition that the matter in concern must not be related to matters such as clearing Allah from resembling the creation. Here. And clearing the Prophet from non-befitting attributes. So the content of this answer is correct and complete. But the sentence is a little bit muddled. If you have a question, go ahead, please. Question 69. Into how many categories did the scholars classify the expressions? Explain the meaning of these categories. So there's two things there. One is a true question, and the second thing is a command. Into how many categories are they? And explain. So, for the question, into how many categories did the scholars classify the expressions? My answer is two. Without going into details, without going into more details. That's my answer here. Two categories. The expressions are two categories without going into more or deeper details. Yani, on a basic level, if we want to deliberately skip details, we're going to say two kinds of expressions, two classifications of expressions, and explain the meanings of these categories. That is, one is the explicit blasphemy. This is a statement that doesn't mean anything but blasphemy. And two is apparent blasphemy. That's the statement that seems to be blasphemy, but is not necessarily blasphemy. So if it's explicit, then there's rules how to deal with it. If it's apparent, then there's rules for how to deal with it. The rules for how to deal with each type are not included in the question. If I address the rules for how to address explicit blasphemy, then I'll be adding more than what the question is requiring. Or apparent blasphemy. How do you deal with that? That would be adding more than what the question itself or the command requires. So I'll stop there. That's my answer. Question or answer 69. It says scholars classified, as if should say the scholars classified the expressions into two categories. Yes, al-zahir and explicit. All right. Now, so why they didn't put an English word for zahir, I'm not sure. And they did put the English word for sarih, explicit. So zahir means apparent or seeming. So it goes on. Zahir, apparent expressions have two meanings or more within the language, but one meaning is more commonly used than the others are. So that's why it's apparent. Apparently it's blasphemy, or seeming. It seems to be blasphemy, but not necessarily is. Correct? When a person utters an expression that is zahir, so then they're committing to not giving the translation. Maybe the one who's translating this doesn't know the best word to use. I'm not sure why not use an English word to. Bridging the language barrier or the language gap, yani removing the language barrier or bridging the language gap is important. When a person utters an expression that is apparent, that seems to be blasphemy, he is not charged with blasphemy unless he knows what the person meant by that saying. This is what I avoided. How to deal with such a statement, such a category of statement. Yani, it says, explain the meaning. So for me, explain the meaning doesn't mean how do you deal with it. Explain the meaning means, so first of all, how many categories means really most literal sense of this question is to give a number, not names. Maybe you understand from this question, name the categories that the scholars gave to expressions, but that's not, it's a how many. So the answer is a number, not even a name. Okay. But we approached it that it means, what are the names? So how many? Two. Correct. Two categories. What are their names? That's not actually in the question explicitly. But I did offer the names from this first question. Only when I thought twice, then I realized it's not asking me for the names. So there you go. A reminder to pay close attention to the actual question. But usually when I ask anyone, how many such and such, they go right to the names. And many, many times, maybe most of the times, I'm not asking for the names. I'm only asking for the number. So the names were offered, though it's not explicitly in the question. Zahir, which is not translated, and explicit. Okay, that's extra information. Explain the meanings of these categories. So I say, explaining the meaning is to say, Zahir means it appears to be blasphemy. It's not explicit, though. Seems to be blasphemy. It's not explicit. The statement can have more than one meaning. And therefore, it's not necessarily blasphemy, but it looks like it is. Explicit means it has no meaning other than blasphemy. Period. Now I have just explained the meanings of these categories. This command has been fulfilled and the question has been answered. The names of these categories is extra information. Yani, that's the answer to another question. What are the names of those categories? And how to deal with or approach, how to approach the utterance of such statements. That's another question. That's extra information. That's what's being offered here. So it says, when a person utters an expression that is zahir, he is not charged with blasphemy unless one knows that unless one knows what the person meant by that saying. Okay, that's correct. But it's extra information. On the other hand, explicit as-sarih does not have any other explanation besides blasphemy. The person who utters an explicit statement that is blasphemous commits blasphemy. He is not asked about what he meant, and no explanation can be accepted from him. No explanation means no alternative interpretation for his statement. That's what it means. If he says, what I meant was, that's unacceptable. But maybe when his explanation is to say, I didn't know what it means. So then that's acceptable. If he explains himself by saying, I didn't know that means that explicit blasphemy. I thought it has more than one meaning, or I thought it has another meaning. That's acceptable. Then we're not going to deem him as a blasphemer. But if he means, no, when I said, damn the messenger of God, I didn't mean Prophet Muhammad. I meant the scorpion. Doesn't Allah make the scorpion come? They're going to say, get that out of here. Get that garbage explanation out of here. And they agreed with me. The answerer said, unless he does not know the meaning of this explicit saying, that's acceptable. Correct. Because he may think that its meaning is other than what it really is. In this case, his statement does not fall into the category of explicit in his regard. Yeah, it is explicit in reality, but it's not explicit coming from him because he doesn't really know what it means. Okay, that's correct answer with a little bit of extra information. However, someone might say, no, explain the meaning of these categories includes talking about how to deal with them. So maybe. For me, explain the meaning of these categories does not mean how do you deal with each category. Or, in other words, what is the judgment of the one who says each kind? For me, that's a different question. The judgment for the one who says the apparent blasphemy is that he's not deemed as a blasphemer unless we know that he meant the blasphemous meaning. And the judgment of the one who says explicit blasphemy is that he does blaspheme unless he does not know the meaning of what he is saying. And I said in my answer to the question, into how many categories did the scholars classify expressions? I said, if you want to not give details, if you want to answer on a very basic level, then the answer is 2. Why I said it like that? Because there's 3. There's 3. Yani, you have a kind of statement that has one meaning. That's explicit. You have a meaning. You have a statement that has, for example, 2 meanings, but one of those meanings is more apparent than the other one. Then that's apparent. Yani, one of them stands out more. One of the meanings stands out more. And then you have a kind of statement which is that it has more than one meaning, but neither stands out more. This is called muhtamal. Muhtamal has more than one meaning, possibly. None of them, though, stand out more than the other. So muhtamal means, I'll just say, equally bearing more than one meaning. Maybe there's a better way to say it. This is the one that usually we don't talk about. Maybe because not so frequent. So on a basic level, there's 2, an explicit statement and an apparent statement. Also, I say, the question is lacking because it says, into how many categories did the scholars classify the expressions? And what's meant by the question is expressions of blasphemy, not any expressions. Into how many categories did the scholars classify the expressions of blasphemy? That's the real question. So someone might say, it's obvious though, because we're in the chapter of blasphemy. And then I'd say, okay, I can grant you that. But still is lacking though. Spell it in English. Muhtamal, yes. Muhtamal is spelled MUH_TAMIL. Muhtamal. Muhtamal. Okay. Question 70. What is obligatory upon the one who committed apostasy? My answer is, it is obligatory on him to return to Islam immediately. That's the short version, period. That's the short version. That short version includes by saying the Shahada. To return to Islam by saying the Shahada. If I remove by saying the Shahada, it's still a correct answer. It's obligatory on him to return to Islam immediately. Period. Let's see what the answer is here. Answer: it is obligatory upon the one who committed apostasy to go back immediately to Islam by uttering the 2 professions. Yes. Here I can tell that the translator is probably, and I can surmise that the translator is not a native English speaker, because he said to go back immediately to Islam instead of to come back to Islam immediately. It is obligatory upon the one who committed apostasy to come back to Islam immediately. That sounds like smooth English sentence. It is obligatory upon the one who committed apostasy to go back immediately to Islam. To me, sounds like a sentence translated into English in someone's mind and then written down on the paper. By uttering the 2 professions, he has also to. So I think this one's Arabic is his first language. Whoever it is, I don't know who did it. He also has to quit what caused apostasy, regret, and determine not to commit it or anything similar to it. Yes, that's true. That's correct answer. Yani, that's not extra. That's part of the answer. He also has to quit what caused the apostasy. Well, that's part of this part. Quit would cause the apostasy. That's inherent in coming back to Islam. That part is already covered by my answer. When I said he has to come back to Islam immediately, this means that's just another way of saying he has to quit the apostasy. So that's a given. But this part, regretting that he did it and determining not to commit anything similar to it, that's extra and it's part of the answer. It's not, when I say it's extra means needs to be added to my answer. Because the regret and the determination to not commit something like it again is not re-embracing of Islam itself. It's possible that a person re-embraces Islam before regretting and before determining not to do it again. How's that? Because a person, he might have committed apostasy, but then he realizes that he committed apostasy and that he's not a Muslim, and he has in his mind no concern, no emotion other than getting into Islam. Nothing else crossed his mind yet. He didn't even give himself a chance to summon up regret and remorse. And he didn't even think twice yet and say, oh, I'll never do that again. So those two, this number one, the regret, and number two, determining not to do it again, those are not conditions for coming back to Islam. But they are obligatory. So they should be in the answer. That's correct. Question 71. Feel free to ask your questions, please. If the apostate did not leave out his or her blasphemy, what would the caliph do to him or her? Okay. My answer is, if an apostate does not quit the blasphemy, then the caliph will arrest him and demand of him to come back to Islam. He must not execute him without demanding of him to come back to Islam. That's haram. He demands of him to come back to Islam. If he does not come back to Islam, then he executes that one. That's my answer. And I'm not saying in my answer, how long does he hold him before executing him? How much of a chance does he give him? Or any other details? There's some details in here that the scholars have differed about. Does he hold him for 3 days? Does he just demand of him to embrace Islam? And if he doesn't, he executes him immediately? The scholars, they talked about that. So that's not in my answer here. And also, what if it's a woman? Is she to be executed? According to the Shafi'i school, yes, but not by consensus. So leaving out what they differed about, just giving an answer according to the Shafi'i school and without details, my answer would be the caliph will arrest this apostate, demand of him to return to Islam. If he does not return to Islam, he will execute him by decapitation, not by drowning, not by burning, etc. Telling you how he will execute him, that's an extra detail for you. Let's see what the answer is here. It says, answer, if the apostate did not leave out his blasphemy by the shahada. So if you want to take out this ash, put the. That helps to remove the language barrier a little bit more. By the shahada, he or she must be asked to repent. So they said must be asked. I said demands of him. That's just about the same thing, but I think mine is closer. That is, he or she must be asked, yani, it's obligatory on the caliph to do it, but asking, yeah, I still like demand, but he demands of him to come back to Islam. So the caliph's going to tell him, for example, say the shahada, straight face. Maybe he has a sword in his hand right there. So that's a demand here. It's not, can you come back to Islam, please? That's a question. That's a polite request there. It says, That is, he or she must be asked to come back to Islam immediately and will be asked repeatedly to do that during a period lasting not more than 3 days. So this is filling in some of what I was leaving out. Okay, that's fine. This is an obligation on the caliph or his representative. Who's his representative? Whoever he sends to do the task. You were there in the Khalifa's session, for example. And the caliph said, Rashid, grab that sword. Come on. You got to go take care of something. Matter of fact, I got something to do. Go take care of that apostate for me, please. Then you are his representative here. The Muslim ruler, i.e. the caliph or his representative, will not accept from the apostate other than Islam. Okay. That's relevant. Says that you understand what he's going to do. Yani, there's no discussion here. There's no compromising here. There's no conversation here. Maybe that caliph is really nice person. He cares for you to come back to Islam, and he's going to have conversation with you. Maybe it will soften your heart. And if you come back to Islam, then that's the most important thing. Or maybe he's going to tell him, Yani, embrace Islam. That's it. Say the Shahada. You know why you are here? Yeah. You know why? Okay. You know why I'm here? Okay. Say the Shahada. He will not accept from the apostate anything other than Islam. Otherwise, the Muslim ruler is obligated to necessarily execute. Execute. I think that's an honest mistake there. Execute, not persecute. Has to execute the apostate if that person does not become a Muslim. This is done in compliance with the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which means, and this is the answer to another question, is there evidence for this procedure? Yes. This is done in compliance with the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which means execute. It says kill. I like execute more because official. This is official business here. Execute the one, it says, who leaves Islam. But the hadith really says, who changes his religion. And that's important because the hadith itself has broader application than leaving Islam. There's more application to this hadith than just leaving Islam because of the words of the hadith itself. Man baddala dinahu, whoever changed his religion, faqtuluh, execute him. So, for example, had there been a caliphate and there was a Jew who was a citizen of the caliphate, a non-Muslim citizen, and then this Jew, he changed his religion to become a Christian. And Jews and Christians are eligible. Jews and Christians are eligible to be citizens of the caliphate. But what if this Jewish citizen became a Christian while being a citizen of the caliphate? Then this hadith applies to him. Man baddala dinahu faqtuluh. Execute whoever changes his religion.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Now, you said something about the person with the representative would say, come back to Islam, demand that person come back to Islam.
Yeah.
That Jew who is changing their religion to Christianity, what would that representative tell him then?
Become Muslim.
Muslim.
Only. He has no option but to become Muslim. He's going to tell him, now you're going to become a Muslim or you're going to be executed.
Got it. Thank you.
Had he just stayed a Jew, he wouldn't be executed. When he changed his religion, then he fell under the hadith. Now his only option is to become a Muslim. Yep. Now, question 72 states some of the judgments pertaining to apostasy. Let me just look ahead here. Question 73. Speak about performing the obligations upon whom it is obligatory to perform them. Okay. So, all right, let me answer this one. Question 72 states some of the judgments pertaining to apostasy. Okay, without me looking at the answer here. Amongst the judgments pertaining to apostasy is one, that his unconsummated marriage is broken. Unconsummated. He got married, never consummated his marriage yet, he or she. Then apostasy will completely obliterate this marriage. It is over. If it were consummated, then apostasy will suspend the marriage and the woman's countdown will start. If the apostate doesn't come back to Islam before the countdown expires, then the marriage is completely obliterated. This apostate will not be married. And add here, and if the person were an apostate and wanted to get married, so it's different. What I just told you is, was married and then became an apostate. Now I'm telling you, the person is an apostate and wants to get married, the marriage will not be valid, no matter whom they marry. If the apostate marries an apostate like himself, marriage is not valid. If the apostate he left Islam to any religion and wanted to marry someone in that religion, the marriage is not valid. The marriage done by an apostate will not be valid to anyone. So it affects the marriage. 2, the fasting is invalidated. 3, the tayammum is invalidated. Doing purification with soil, the tayammum is invalidated. 4, the slaughter of the apostate is invalid. If he slaughters an animal, it will be as if he didn't slaughter it. So it will be haram meat. Even if he slaughters it like Muslims slaughter, it will be haram meat. 5, and the apostate loses all the reward that he has been earning for all of his good deeds. He gave charities, he performed prayers, he did fasting, he smiled at others with a good intention. All these good deeds he's doing. He helped old lady cross the street with a good intention, though. You need the good intention for the good deed to count. For the sake of Allah, to do it for the sake of Allah. He loses the reward of all of his good deeds by committing apostasy, and when he comes back to Islam, they don't come back. He has to start all over, collecting good deeds. And he won't lose any of his bad deeds. Here, and according to Abu Hanifa, apostasy will obliterate a marriage no matter what. There's no detail for Abu Hanifa. Consummated or not consummated, apostasy destroys the marriage immediately. And according to Abu Hanifa, not just the tayammum is invalidated, also the wudu and the ghusl. That's according to Abu Hanifa. They are also invalidated by apostasy, but not according to Ash-Shafi'i, just the tayammum according to Ash-Shafi'i. Okay, that's what comes to my mind for the answer to this question. Let's see what I missed maybe. It says here, now only because my eye just saw some of the answer, now I remembered some things, but let me read now. Answer, some of the judgments that pertain to apostasy are that the apostate's fasting is invalidated. I got that one. And so is his tayammum, yes. This also applies to the marriage before the first sexual intercourse, correct. If the apostate returns to Islam before the iddah is over, his or her spouse comes back to that person. That's if the marriage were consummated, correct. I covered that. In this case, it is not required to renew the marriage contract, yes. Moreover, the apostate marriage contract is invalid, whether with a Muslim, Jew, Christian, or anyone else. Yes. It is haram to eat from the animal slaughtered by the apostate. Yes. The apostate does not inherit. This one I missed. And the apostate's wealth is not inherited. Correct. Yani, the inheritance of the apostate is confiscated and put into the Muslim treasury. It is not permissible to pray the funeral prayer for the apostate, correct? I didn't say that one. It is not an obligation to wash and shroud that person, correct? I didn't say that one. In addition, it is not permissible to bury the apostate in a Muslim cemetery, correct? I didn't say that one. And the apostate's money is fay, meaning it's confiscated. This means the money will be spent on Islamic matters. Yes. And it will be put into the Muslim treasury. Wallahu a'lam. We'll stop there. Any question?
Yeah, Shay, I need you to go back up to you spelling the word, and you went off so fast.
Which word?
Boy.
Muhtamal?
Yeah, that's it. 69.
Yeah, here it is. Muhtamal.
All right, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. MashaAllah, that time went so fast. I feel like that lesson was like 15 minutes. We'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala. We have the Aqidah of As-Sanusi in a half hour. Barakallahu fikum. Yes.
Yes, my question is, other than this, you did mention make the intention for the sake of Allah. When you say that, what do you understand by that?
It means
I put to obey and to worship.
Okay, making the intention for the sake of Allah means to dedicate what you are doing to God. It's a dedication to God. So this old lady needs help crossing the street. Let me do it for the sake of God. Let me do this let me dedicate what I am doing to God as a worship. Then that's what it means for one to correct his intention, so he can get the reward for his good deed.
Thank you, Sheikh. You give us a lot by the way you explain it, the way you say it, the way you think about it. I'm so blessed that Allah guided you to the lesson. Your lesson.
Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu fikum. And me, as for me, I am so blessed to have very good people in my life like yourselves. Barakallahu.